The Khilji Dynasty was the second ruling family of the Muslim Sultanate of Delhi. It marked the peak of Muslim imperialism in India. This dynasty was of Turkish origin, though the Khilji tribe had been settled in Afghanistan for a long time. The Khilji rulers ruled for 3 decades and expanded the Sultanate. We shall learn more about these rulers and their conquests in this lesson. Jalaluddin Firuz Khilji was the founder and first ruler of the Khilji dynasty. Jalaluddin Khilji captured the throne of Delhi after the last ruler of the Mamluk dynasty in 1290 CE. He was a mild, pious and weak person. He not only forgave the rebellious nobles, but also treated them well. This led to lawlessness and revolts amongst his nobles. He adopted a lenient policy towards the Mongols and married one of his daughters to Ulugh Khan, the Mongol leader. Taking advantage of Jalaluddin's generosity, his ambitious nephew, Alauddin Khilji, previously known as Ali Gurshab, treacherously murdered and succeeded him. Alauddin Khilji was the most powerful and ambitious ruler of the Khilji dynasty. He was a brilliant general and a shrewd administrator. Post Jalaluddin's death, he declared himself the Sultan and ascended the throne of Delhi. The sons and grandsons of the Sultan were either blinded or killed, and all obstacles to the throne were removed. Alauddin Khilji won over the nobles who betrayed Jalaluddin to his side by bribing them with rich gifts. However, he later took back the gifts and had all, except 3 nobles, blinded and killed. He dreamt of conquering the whole world and was the first Turkish ruler to establish an all-India empire in his reign of 20 years. During his reign, the boundaries of the Delhi Sultanate extended beyond the Vindhyas up to the Deccan, taking the Sultanate to new heights. Alauddin undertook various conquests and expeditions with a view to expand his empire and control most territories. The areas he conquered ranged from Gujarat, Rajasthan, and Malwa to the Deccan region. Let us learn more about his expeditions. Alauddin sent an expedition to Gujarat in 1927 under the command of his generals to conquer Gujarat. Alauddin's army conquered and annexed Gujarat and plundered its wealth. Their prized possession was Malik Kafur, a slave who was bought for 1,000 dinars. He later rose to the position of a general in the army. Alauddin's victory over Gujarat gave him control over the western seaports. Between 1301 and 1303, Alauddin campaigned in Rajasthan and conquered Ranthambore and Chittor, the capital of Mewar. The Rajputs fought bravely against Alauddin's army but lost the battle. The Rajput women performed Johar and burned themselves to death. This conquest was followed by the capture of the important cities of Mandu, Ujjain, Dhar, and Chanderi in Malwa. The conquest of Malwa opened the door to the south for Alauddin. By 1305 CE, Alauddin became the master of the whole of North India. Alauddin sent a large army towards the south under his trusted general Malik Kafur. He defeated the Yadavas, Kakatiyas, Hoysalas, and the Pandyas. With his victory, he carried away a lot of war booty, which included precious metals, elephants, horses, and slaves. Alauddin was the first Muslim ruler to send an expedition to the Deccan region. His intention was to exploit the wealth and resources of the Deccan and extend his political supremacy. The rugged terrain and its distance from Delhi had discouraged North Indian rulers to go beyond the Vindhyas. The Deccan expeditions were led by Malik Kafur, who defeated the rulers of Devgiri, Warangal, and Dwarasamudra and attacked and plundered Madurai in the far south. Alauddin thus became the first Turkish ruler to extend his influence south of the Vindhyas. The successful Deccan campaign brought Alauddin enormous wealth and enhanced his power and prestige. Towards the end of Alauddin's reign, his empire was as large as that of Emperor Ashoka. Alauddin did not annex the Deccan after conquering it. He was far-sighted and realized that it would not be easy to control these provinces from Delhi. Moreover, his main objective was to acquire as much wealth as possible from the south to pay for the maintenance of his huge army and the administration of his territories. The rulers of the Deccan were forced to acknowledge the supremacy of the Sultan and pay heavy annual tribute as a mark of submission to his overlordship. The Mongols attacked India 5 times during the early years of Alauddin's reign, but these attacks were successfully repulsed. Alauddin built a strong defense system to protect his empire from the Mongol raids. The forts along the route of Mongol attacks were repaired, and the frontier provinces were placed under the best generals. He reorganized and strengthened his army. Mongol leaders were captured and trampled under the feet of elephants. The Mongols, who had embraced Islam and settled in Delhi during Jalaluddin's reign, were mercilessly massacred. Let us go through all the important points that we have learnt in the lesson The Khilji Dynasty, Part 1. Dynasty was the second ruling family of the Muslim Sultanate of Delhi. The Khilji dynasty marked the peak of Muslim imperialism in India. The Khilji rulers ruled for 3 decades and expanded the Sultanate. Of them, Alauddin Khilji emerged as the most ambitious and powerful ruler. He dreamt of conquering the whole world and undertook many expeditions to establish an all-India robust empire in his reign of 20 years. We shall further learn about some of the measures and policies he adopted to maintain his empire and keep his nobles under control. During his reign, Alauddin faced many rebellions from his nobles and own relations. Alauddin undertook a number of measures to curb this situation. The nobles of Alauddin's court were prohibited from intermarrying without Alauddin's permission. Gambling was forbidden, and no parties could be organized by the nobles without the prior consent of the Sultan. Alauddin banned the use of wine. To set an example, he brought all the casks of wine from his palace and emptied them publicly. Nobles were not allowed to maintain armies. Thus, the nobles were denied the opportunity of getting close to each other and conspiring against the Sultan. Alauddin set up an elaborate and efficient spy system against the nobles. All their activities at home or at public places were promptly reported back to him. The nobles were no longer able to move freely. All feudal land grants were confiscated by Alauddin. Fresh grants were made, but the new landholders were no longer the proprietors of the land. Landholders were only entitled to a part of the revenue which was fixed by the Sultan. Landholders could not levy additional taxes on the peasants. Alauddin was the first Sultan of Delhi to lay the foundation of a permanent standing army. Alauddin enlarged the size of his army. He introduced the system of branding horses, or dag, to prevent the substitution of good horses with inferior ones. A descriptive role, or chehra, for each soldier was also maintained. Spies were posted in different parts of the empire to keep the Sultan informed of all developments. The salaries of the soldiers were reduced and fixed and were paid in cash. To meet the cost of maintaining a huge army and pay for the numerous expeditions, the Sultan needed a large amount of money. Thus, Alauddin introduced certain revenue reforms with a view to increase his tax collections. As land was the most important source, Alauddin ordered the measurement of all land under cultivation. The land was divided into different categories according to its fertility, and the land tax was fixed accordingly. Special revenue officials were appointed to collect the taxes. Alauddin raised the land tax in the Doab region between the Ganga and Yamuna rivers to 1/2 of the produce. He ensured that the peasants paid the revenue directly to the king. This saved the peasants from paying extra taxes to the local nobles or to the middlemen. To discourage corruption and keep a check on his officers, Alauddin introduced the system of getting the accounts of his officers audited. This system was later followed by Sher Shah and Akbar. To compensate for the reduced salaries of the soldiers and heavy taxes imposed on the peasants, Alauddin introduced price or market control policy. He set up 3 markets at Delhi, one for food grains, the second for cloth, and the third for horses, slaves, and cattle. Each market was under the control of an officer called Shahana. The prices of all commodities were fixed, and prices of essential items such as food grains, sugar, cooking oil, cloth, etc. were kept low. Market officers were appointed to keep a strict watch on the prices, weights, and the activities of the traders. Shop owners were asked to charge the rates fixed by the Sultan. Anyone caught hoarding goods or cheating customers in price or weight was severely punished. For example, if a merchant sold a commodity under the weight stated, an amount of flesh equivalent to the deficiency in weight was cut off from his body. State warehouses were set up and stocked with food grains, which were released whenever there was a famine or shortage. The idea of making goods cheaper was probably introduced because it allowed Alauddin to maintain a large army on limited sources. Alauddin Khilji was a benefactor of art and learning. Amir Khusro, the famous Persian poet, lived in his court. Alauddin built large and imposing monuments during his reign, thus displaying his keen interest in architecture. The Alai Darwaza, added as an entrance door to the Qutub, is the most beautiful specimen of early Turkish architecture. He built palaces and mosques and also a madrasa near Qutub. The Siri fort and the palace of 1,000 pillars were built by Alauddin. Alauddin was a brilliant strategist and an outstanding military commander. However, the policies he imposed made many people poor. His discrimination towards the Hindus made them wary, such that they would not stock any items such as gold, silver, tankas, jittals, or superfluous commodities which could cause rebellion. They were even deprived of the common luxury of chewing betel. Alauddin passed away in 1316 CE. After Alauddin's death, a war of succession broke out, which was won by Khusro Malik, the last ruler. Ghiyasuddin defeated him and started the Tughlaq dynasty, bringing an end to the powerful Khilji dynasty. Let us summarize all the important points that we have learnt in the lesson, the Khilji Dynasty, Part 2.